We have the Ayatollah of fantasy rock and roller with us today, Adam Rank. How you doing, Rank?
They look great in person, and I just can't wait till next year where we can pack it full of 25,000.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I didn't know it was Ball Guys Day. It was being ranked. I mean, how can you lose?
This is the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast.
Hello and welcome to Behind the Grind, presented by the Fantasy Points Media Group. As always, I am joined by Major Caldwell and Tara Roberts. Hey, Tara. Hey, Major. How you doing?
Good.
Good.
I'm doing good.
Way to step up there.
I was waiting for Tara to go first, you know?
I was waiting for you. I was trying to be polite.
Well, either way, on today's show, we have the Deposit King himself, an influencer, a self-proclaimed aspiring engagement farmer, but also the creative lead over at Fantasy Life, the main Manz himself, Peter Overzet. How you doing?
I'm doing good, guys. Yeah, I think I'm coming in even maybe a little hotter because I just did a stream from 10 to 11. I already got a few cups of coffee, so we're ready to go.
Oh, it's gonna be a good show.
I'm not gonna lie. Part of me wanted to put my hat on backwards, put a pair of shades on, turn around, and then slowly come in. Welcome to the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast, Behind the Grind. I just felt like part of me had that coming here, just as a tribute to you here, but I just can't do that. So, hey, we are glad to have you on the show, and we start every show off with the same question, and it goes to like this: if you were a WWE superstar or closer coming in the ninth inning, what would your intro music be to get the fans excited?
Well, man, that's a good question. The one I always get that I'm nostalgic for is, some of the first CDs I owned as a prepubescent teenager were Jock Jams Volume 1 and the Space Jam soundtrack. And there's the I love it. And then there's also the movie Hardball was the other one of the soundtracks, and it has the song I Love It When You Call Me Big Papa. And so I think that one, just me, a scrawny little white kid, coming into the room like that, I've always held on to that. So I think I would maybe come into that one.
The little Keanu Reeves there.
Exactly. Throw your hands in the air.
There, getting the kid going. Yeah, I got you. I got you.
Yeah. A 12-year-old saying, I see some ladies tonight that should be having my baby. It definitely
That was so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then, you fire out the little stink eye to the opposing batter there. You got that music going on. I mean, it's going to raise a lot of questions for your opposition there. Now, one question we have to kind of follow up on this is, so we got the Jock Jams, we got the Space Jam, we like it when you call me Big Papa. We got that all going on there. What is that one guilty pleasure song that you have that may be on that iPod, or maybe that one CD you're like, you know what? I just really like Mariah Carey. Like, what's that one CD that maybe you don't want to admit that you have?
Well, it was funny because when I think got a little bit more refined music taste, I found myself liking a lot of like Swedish pop music. And then I kind of realized, I think early on, I was maybe liked ABBA more than I realized, because I'm like, I think all the stuff I kind of like now that is a little more funky and electronic though is heavily influenced by ABBA. So I think ABBA might actually be my like guilty pleasure of liking Swedish pop music.
You could do worse than ABBA. I mean, ABBA's pretty good. I have to give this to you. I kind of enjoy a little bit of ABBA on the side every once in a while. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, I mean, they're called guilty pleasures. There is the pleasure part in there. There has to be some value to it.
Yeah, I have to say these are like everything you name. These are like literally top tier. You basically like from a music perspective, you're number one for me right now. So there you
I
go.
love it. I love
Tara,
it.
I don't know if you want to admit that out loud, but I'm gonna let Pete.
Space Jams was an amazing soundtrack. You have no idea how many times I listened to that. Hardball, and now ABBA. Come on,
I'm gonna let you guys have it. He won me over with the Big Papa. I'm with you. The other stuff
I lost you on the ABBA. Yeah.
But let's get back to let's get into you as a youth. Did you play any sports? And if you did, how did it develop to the person you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I played a bunch of sports when I was younger. I did focus on basketball in high school. I played high school basketball and ran cross country. It was funny. I was just actually talking to someone about this the other day, where I was such a gym rat early on, but I was also super short, and kind of like my passion and my growth spurts for basketball like never lined up in a good way. And I ended up growing like more in college once I was like, God, I'm just never going to be tall enough to be really good at this. So I was fine as a high schooler, but never got my growth spurt enough. And it's funny because I do remember, in high school, I would go to the library with my buddy, and they had those Yahoo fantasy drafts, and they were Yahoo basketball ones. And we would have a free period, and we would only have 30 minutes. And those drafts, if you did the slow or the live draft, it would take an hour or whatever. But they had this option on there, and I don't even know if they still have these days, but you could just automate the draft, which is hilarious because the funnest part is drafting. But we would just go in and create accounts and teams and automate the draft and just see if we liked our team, because we didn't have the full time to draft one. So I do think, by merging my love of basketball with getting in Yahoo drafts, I remember at the time I was always like trying to get Paul Pierce. He was one of the best fantasy players there, and would have been like 2003 or 2004. So yeah, there was kind of the convergence of, all right, maybe I'm not good enough on the actual hardwood, so I'll draft these fantasy versions.
And who's some of your favorite players and teams when you was growing up? Is it Patrick Lard?
Oh yeah, Patrick Laird was not on my radar. Are you saying Patrick Waugh?
No, Lard. How you say his name? Lard.
Oh, Patrick Laird.
Laird.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. No, I mean, Laird's younger than me, so he would not have been on my radar when I was young. I thought you said Patrick Waugh because I grew up in Colorado, and I was an Avs fan, and they of course won the finals last night. But yeah, I was kind of
hockey?
one of.
Are we talking? Is that hockey? I know Matt.
Yeah.
Matt's a hockey guy.
I'm not even that huge of a hockey guy, but I remember when Colorado wins their first Stanley Cup in 21 years here. But yeah, I was kind of probably the type of sports fan that people wouldn't have liked, in that I was a kid who jumped around. I did like a lot of the Colorado era teams. I mean, we had the, Dikembe Mutombo era, Nuggets and those guys, the Colorado Rockies, the Blake Street Bombers, but I would kind of pick and choose. I did like Duke basketball. I know that's controversial. John Starks was like my favorite NBA player because he just had that kind of underdog ethos that I seemed to connect with. So yeah, I kind of bounced around in addition to the Denver sports teams.
Yeah, we kind of throw in that Patrick Laird comment there because, hey, we know you guys are like bros. You and Patrick Laird, I mean, that goes back. That's a real life connection that you made here a couple seasons ago.
Yeah, it was super cool. Yeah, it started as a bit. There was this week in fantasy where we just started joking, like, what if you played him in your DFS contests? Because he was projecting to get a little bit more of a role. People were like, you're full of shit. And then I just kind of leaned into the bit and was like, I'm just going to talk about Patrick Laird for an entire week on Twitter. I think someone kept track of it, and I ended up having like 160 tweets about Patrick Laird over a 4-day span. And eventually the game happened. He didn't do much. And I had bought a Patrick Laird cake, which was one of the things as the bit escalated throughout the week. And then I was just like, basically, I think drunk and exhausted from a week of doing this bit. And I remember I just decided I would go on Periscope and eat this cake. And I started eating it with my hands. And eventually Laird noticed it, was like, what the hell is this guy doing? And next thing you know, me and my buddy Davis Maddock were reaching out to him. And he's like, look, if the next time the Dolphins win a game, I'll do a podcast with you guys. So they ended up beating the Eagles a couple weeks later, and we got to do a podcast with him, and then have gotten to know him got to meet up with him in Miami. It was last December, and so yeah, it's been fun to get to know him. He's a great dude.
Well, that's great. As a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, I'm glad you're able to meet one of your heroes there. Now, you talked about Patrick Waugh again. I remember that clearly as a Montreal Canadiens fan. I remember exactly how Patrick Waugh ended up in Colorado. I mean, it was one of the worst moments of my life, but one of the greatest moments of my life here, and maybe not saying a whole lot, is I was going through some old YouTube videos and I came across the old broathlon. I mean, I could see those high school basketball skills paying off on the blacktop there. There's you and Adam Levitin there kind of going at it. By the way, we got to do something with that headband that he was sporting there in that one video. I mean, there's no need for that. But there's some skill there. So how did this come about? Who's the greatest broathlon athlete of all time?
Yeah, so the broathlon, when I first started kind of making video content in the fantasy space, it was via this character known as Pete Manzanelli. And, he was kind of a spoof on kind of like the DFS bros that were pretty cocky. And then it kind of had, I don't know, like a little bit of a Guido spin on it too, a guy who just thought he was a lot cooler than he was. And one of the first ideas I had, and, I was big fans of Adam Levitan and Jonathan Bales. And those guys always like to do prop bets. And, they would do exercise prop bets, who can you run a mile under X amount of time and put money up. And then, as a way for both entertainment and to kind of self-motivate with some of these health goals. And I was like, what would be the Manz version of a prop bet? So, Manz, this character concocted the Broathlon, which was basically a mixture of sporting events that also involved alcohol. So instead of just running a mile, it was a beer mile that we did initially. We had, you had to take a shot and then see who could throw the football the furthest. So just these really weird competitions. And then the second year, the one you're referencing, first year we did a football one. And then the second year we did a basketball one. So we had Edward 40 hands where you had to tape a 40 to your hand and then play a game of horse. So it was a disaster. And to answer the second part of your question, I mean, Bales won the first one, and Jonathan Bales is just, he's an incredible gambler, a really good athlete, just not a guy you want to bet against. And he dominated the football one, despite Manz winning the beer mile. And then Peter Jennings, who's a really good shooter, of course, he won the basketball one. So Manz is 0 for 2 on his own events.
Oh no. Well, maybe next year. But let's dive deeper into you in prior years, and let's talk about a decision. What's a decision that changed the trajectory of your life?
Yeah, I mean, well, the big obvious one is, so last year, and it probably was about May, I did decide to leave my full-time day job. I worked at a software company, did marketing. I had that job for a long time. And, I was kind of getting to the point where, I had enough irons in the fire with kind of fantasy and content creation that I felt I could make that leap. And, it was still maybe a little thin. It took a leap of faith to do it. But I'm really glad that I did. It ended up, I think coming out of the pandemic, because I had so much more time at my computer, I was like, what if we just stream all the time and I'll have fun and I'll do shows with my friends. And that kind of laid the groundwork for some bigger opportunities. I was like, oh, maybe you can make a living doing this, and ended up having the confidence about a year ago to pursue this full time. And so, yeah, that was definitely probably one of the biggest, decisions I've made, because, it's a little easier to be like, yeah, I'm just going to do shows I like for fun. And if anything good comes of it, so be it. But to kind of rely on it, to make a living and take care of your family and all that stuff was a bit of a scary jump, but I'm definitely glad I did it.
How did you make the choice to make that leap? Was there something that kind of triggered you to say that you felt comfortable with it, or was there, I guess what made you feel like now was the time?
Yeah, I mean, there were probably two things. The tangible thing was I got a partnership with Underdog, a company I work closely with, and I was like, okay, maybe I can make enough money doing this to make this sustainable. And then the other part of it was like, I come from an improv background, and there's a thing with improv where people just say yes too much. You just say yes to everything. And what happened to me is I had said yes to so many things that I was like, I was so busy because I was doing my day job, then trying to juggle all these shows. I was starting to write the newsletter for Matthew Berry. And I was like, I just don't have enough time in the day to do all this stuff. And then, still be a good husband and take care of myself and all this stuff. So it was both a matter of, just time crunch and being like, something's got to go. And I really don't want to say bye to all this fun stuff I'm doing. And then, Underdog, kind of making that possible from working with them, that really made the stars align.
So let's talk about the journey leading up to that. So what are some of the biggest changes that you see when you started versus where you are right now?
Yeah, I think so maybe from like a content or creative perspective, or just kind of how it folds into my life. Yeah,
from a content.
It is interesting. Like, people always say, it's not always a good thing to make your hobby a full-time thing, right? Because the second you do that, then that becomes the work. And there are definitely things that I do now because I'm on my own that aren't, my favorite thing to do, whether it's, you're basically kind of on like the business side or the admin side and all of the, housekeeping, bookkeeping type stuff that comes with kind of running the show yourself. So, but I do think I'm really fortunate that I've been able to kind of maintain all the things I loved about doing as a hobby while making it, more of a career. And again, it kind of goes to, my partnerships with Underdog and Fantasy Life, where they really they weren't saying, hey, come abandon what you're doing and do what we want you to do. It was like, no, keep doing what you're doing. We want to be a part of that. So I was very appreciative that kind of transition wasn't as jarring as, maybe it might have been otherwise. And I don't think I answered your question, but hopefully that was interesting.
No, yes, that was good.
Yeah, we don't always stick to the script. I mean, if someone kind of goes off there a little bit and answers a different question altogether, that works for us too. So as long as we have some sound clips to kind of pull out here and there, we're okay with anything there. So Major, over to you.
Yeah. What's something about yourself that people may not realize or may not know about you?
That's it. It's funny when you say that, and I'm like, I'm so open on stream that it's like, geez, maybe I'm too open because I feel like everyone knows most of this stuff.
Matt can speak to that.
Yeah. No, I think one thing I do for the past like 2 to 3 years, I go pretty regularly to a boxing gym. And I don't talk about that a ton, maybe a couple references to it here and there. For a long time, I would just, like run, do some kind of shitty workout at the gym, not really knowing what I was doing. And I was like, I need to mix this up. And I found this boxing gym, and it's just like really captured my attention. And it kind of, we all like these hacks to working out, things that like, it's like why we like playing sports, because you're getting exercise and it doesn't feel like you're quote unquote working out. And boxing has really been that for me, where these workouts kick my ass, but because I'm thinking about technique and you're hitting a heavy bag or doing, these cross training exercises, I've really come to enjoy it, have been doing a little sparring occasionally, and just, so that's maybe a thing that people don't know, that I've kind of thrown myself into the boxing gym world near me.
Do you find that being too open at times could be problematic? I mean, I was going around when I build these show sheets, I kind of talk to some friends of the guests and this and that. I'm like, hey, do you got anything I can bring up during the show? And I talked to Daggle, and he mentioned something about a car and doing some stuff that we're not going to bring it on the show. We're not going to bring it up on the show here, but I mean, this is something I think you even brought up on one of your podcasts, just talking about how open you are about everything that goes on. I mean, maybe a little too open from time to time, eh?
Yeah, this seems like such a classy operation here on this stream. We're recording this at 11:30. That was a drunken anecdote on a very late night episode of Ship Chasing. So I am, you know what? I am pretty open, but I am just going to completely sidestep this question. I'm going to pretend like it doesn't exist, and I'm going to send Daigle a strongly worded text after the show.
Hit him with a Euro step, huh?
That's right. Yeah, you might call it travel, but I don't care. I just put it in there.
I like it. Creative. Where does your creativity come from? When we, look at your videos and you've got so much new content coming out and there's a lot of creativity around it, where does that kind of inspiration come from? Yeah,
I think, I mentioned I came into kind of doing content from an improv background. So I had started doing improv in like 2010. And, before I had started making any online content, I did that for about 4 to 5 years. There was kind of some overlap when I started doing online stuff and kept up with the improv. But so I come from a more comedic background where, you're constantly having to generate ideas. With improv, you're initiating a scene and you're building out these worlds and trying to find the comedic angle. And so I do think I bring a lot of that to how I approach content. And I also, when I started, I love fantasy, but I was like, look, I'm not an analyst at heart. Like, I'm a player and I'm a comedian. And so it was like, what is my unique spin? What can I bring to the table? Because I'm not going to be able to write, 10,000 word matchup columns that people are super excited to read. That's just not my skill set. And I do think I've improved as an analyst just because I'm obsessed with this stuff. But I still think my strong suit is that creativity and trying to think of ways that we can, innovate on the tried and true things. And I think that you mentioned the randomizer draft. That's one of my favorite things, just taking this concept of a best ball draft and being like, what if we blow it up and we make every pick be meaningless, but dictated by these crazy prompts. So I like living within this fantasy world, but, kind of trying to approach it from different angles.
So I'm trying to piece together the career trajectory here of Peter Overzet here, and I kind of get this whole back to the Yahoo day, the best ball, the sort of the Yahoo drafts, which basically turned into best ball randomized drafts. And that's two things that you specialize in, both the randomizer and best balls. And somehow back in high school, that's kind of where it all maybe started. I don't know, underlying or whatever. I don't know exactly where to go with that. But I mean, you could see that this was something that maybe led to where you were now. Now, when we look at your off season versus your in season type thing, where do you find time to recharge, and what do you do in the off season? Saying that there is hypothetically an off season, do you maybe go to a comedy club and do a little stand up from time to time?
You know, I haven't done live comedy in a long time. Partly, you know, the pandemic, and it's really sad. It like wiped out a lot of scenes here in Boston. I know in New York. I mean, things are finally starting to pick up a little bit, but the theater that I went to for those 5 years, like they lost their space, and you know, they tried to do some online stuff, but I mean, improv especially, it's such a live in real life medium. So I have missed that. Although I will say last week, Underdog hosted us at their offices. I do this other show called Club Top Shot, more in kind of like the NFT basketball sectors. And we got to do a live show there. Manz, who I referenced earlier, actually made an appearance at that. But it really did scratch that itch of getting to do a live performance. And, you know, when you guys are aware of this too, you do streams, you do stuff, like it's awesome to get comments from people and feedback. But there's something so visceral about getting real-time feedback, getting a laugh in real time that is just so unique. And so I do miss that. Although I will say the convenience of being able to just make content from, you know, your office at home is really nice, because I was sick of driving, you know, 45 minutes in traffic to the theater. And then, yeah, to answer like recharge the batteries, I am like very protective of kind of my non-screen time, just because I know how much of my day I'm going to spend. You know, I'm going to work at my computer all day, and then I have shows a couple nights a week. And so I do really try to unplug, you know, when I'm not at the computer, and make sure I'm not tethered to my phone. Although these best ball drafts do make that a little hard sometimes.
I think this question might be interesting coming from you. What's on your YouTube playlist? Are you like a cat video type of person, a UFC? What are you watching? What podcast? What's on your YouTube playlist?
And I mentioned that I like ABBA, and then you pegged me for a cat video watcher. I mean, look at what happened here.
I mean, sometimes you got to just connect the dots, you know?
You know, it's funny because I make so much YouTube content, there's something where I don't find myself necessarily consuming a lot of YouTube content. I think I might just have like a mental block. I will say the YouTube that I generally watch is because I try to do a little yoga during the week. And so I'll watch, she's one of the biggest YouTubers, Yoga with Adrienne. She just has these 15, 20 minutes, leads you through a really simple yoga exercise. It's just like calm, soothing, simple. And so she's probably my most played, you know, YouTube playlist these days.
Nice,
cool.
Nice.
I need to tap into that. What is it again? One more time?
Yoga with Adrienne. And I feel like she's launched kind of, there's now this whole niche. Like if you just search, you know, yoga or morning stretches, I mean, there's now hundreds of these instructors, and you can kind of sample them out, see which ones you like. But I've found, you know, sure, could I stretch and do yoga on my own? Yeah, but I'll like, you know, 8 minutes in, get distracted and go make coffee or whatever. Whereas it's like, if I put on this 15-minute video, I generally am going to stick through the whole thing.
I think I'm onto something here right now. So if this whole fantasy thing doesn't pay off for me here, I may just start my like downward dog with Donnelly type yoga series here.
Please don't. The name is kind of cool, but please don't.
You know, kind of as Major's saying here, and I think you're a good looking guy. I just, from the type of people who I've seen succeed on yoga YouTube, you don't really look like them.
I like it. I like when
I do not see the lie here. I do not see the lie.
That's so funny, man.
You mentioned NFT content creation. Do you consume NFT content as well?
Yeah, I do. It's funny, we're now in, you know, what everyone calls kind of a bear market. We've had a few different of these hype cycles over the past, I don't know, year and a half, where things got crazy. And now we've had what I would probably call very natural, healthy pullbacks, because some of those valuations and stuff were getting absurd. But yeah, I like keeping tabs on it. You know, I got pulled into it via kind of the sports NFTs, you know, kind of having a stand-in or a replacement for physical sports cards made so much sense to me logically. It's like, I remember even early in the pandemic, I had friends who was like getting into buying physical sports cards, and they were telling me the process with, you buy these, you ship them off to get them graded, and then you got to get them back, and then you put them online, and there's not much of a market. I was like, guys, have fun. This sounds like way too much work. So when Top Shot hit, it did click with me. And so I've had fun with it and do that show. And, I guess, it's less interesting when the price doesn't go up nonstop, but I still think it's a pretty interesting concept that will continue to evolve, and probably good to shake out a lot of the shitty projects here and let the cream rise to the top ultimately.
Yeah. Back to your shows. Let's go back to the randomizer. With the randomizer, what are a couple of your most memorable shows that you've had?
Yeah, I've been really fortunate to have some really fun guests. The first year I did it, Matthew Berry came on, and, I sometimes, you assume like, okay, the guest kind of knows the concept of the show, whatever, with Matthew, very busy dude, very big in the fantasy space. He wasn't super familiar what the show was going to be like. And so right out of the gate, it said, it was a prompt, or you must draft Logan Thomas 101. I think he didn't get the prompt right. So I was like, Matthew, we have to take Logan Thomas 101. He was like, wait, what? I just thought that meant we had to take him at some point in the draft. And I was like, no, we have to take him with our first pick. And then his mind was like, oh, I see what's going on here. So that was a great moment. And I have tried to think of one of my favorite moments last year. Michael Leone, who is from Establish the Run, he collects NFL jerseys. And so someone had a prompt that was like, you have to put on 10 NFL jerseys before you make your next selection. And so he's running to his closet, and he's starting to look like the Hunchback of Notre Dame here, just a massive amount of jerseys on. And he's like sweating and can barely move like the kid in the Christmas Story. And so that one always sticks out to me as well.
Love it.
How those randomizer K9 merch box sets coming along? There's pretty hot commodity last year, around this time last year.
Yeah, so it's so funny you say that.
You have one right behind you?
Well, I have a few of the things around here by me, but what Major's referencing is I did this merch box for the randomizer, and I was like, what's, I think it's a unique show. I was like, what could be a fun, unique thing around it? I was like, oh, I'll put together a merch box. It will give you a chance to be on the show, like through a raffle ticket. I also got Underdog kicked in a $25 entry into a tournament, just tried to make it a fun thing. I got a bottle opener, but what Major's referencing is, some of these things like this ball, and I guess not necessarily the spinner, but people started being like, my dog loves all the things in this box, and they're true. Oh, there was a Frisbee too.
Frisbee, yeah.
And I was like, did I make a merch box for dogs on accident? And I kind of just, what I always do, lean into the bit. And so people were all then sending me pictures of their dogs with the Frisbee and tearing up the Nerf footballs. So yes, the first time I tried to make a merch box for humans, I accidentally made it for dogs.
Hey, but at least you know how to lean into it. From the improv stuff, you kind of got to say yes and go with it. So I think that kind of worked out. $1 million idea. I think you should really market that and get it out there.
I know, we just had to lean into it. Happy for all the dogs to enjoy the products.
Well, let's be honest. People treat their dogs better than they treat themselves when it comes to it's all said and done here.
True. Very true.
If I was to purchase one of these K9 merch boxes, how many Manz coins would I need to purchase one? And how do you get these Manz coins?
Well, here's the thing. I guess technically I probably need to remove the randomizer merch boxes from my store. Now with my store, it's called like drop shipping, right? So it's all done through a warehouse. You put your order in and they ship it to you. And I don't have to do anything other than getting the listing and the file up there. With these merch boxes, I was an idiot. And I was like, I will try to guess how many of these I can sell. I will individually order inventory for all these boxes. I will manually put together each one of these boxes myself. I will go and ship them individually to you. And what I realized is that is a fucking shit ton of work that I don't want to do again. So I don't really want to be in the business of selling any more randomizer boxes. But to answer your question, I mean, you could probably have my remaining inventory for just a single Manz coin. That's how valuable those coins are.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're pretty fancy too. Like, how did you come up with the Manz coin itself? I mean, it goes back to that whole persona there, Pete Manzanelli there, and everything, having his own money and all that fun stuff. But how did that coin, and even the persona a little bit more, come about? Look at that thing. That's a beautiful coin right there.
Nice.
Yeah, so like I said, Manz started out, kind of interested in the DFS space. He then got into poker, and he just fashioned himself as this crusher across all of these, different sectors. And this was around the time crypto first boomed. So, we're just talking about NFTs. This was probably back 2017 where we had that crazy crypto run. Everyone was talking about Bitcoin at the Thanksgiving table that year. And so, of course, Manz, in his, beautiful galaxy brain thought, what if he invented the world's physical cryptocurrency? I think not realizing that physical currency exists, but that's what he called Manz coin, the world's first physical cryptocurrency. And he sold these coins to anyone was interested in having a tangible piece of a cryptocurrency. He had, I believe the initial run had 200 only, and those sold out right out of the gate and now are, one of the most valuable commodities out there.
It all goes back to the creativity. So if you weren't doing what you're doing right now, what would you be doing? And I'm gonna go ahead and just nix some things out based off what we know. We know marketing, so I'm gonna nix that out. We know obviously, canine subscription boxes. We can not nix that out right there
Yes.
as well.
No improv either.
No improv. Yeah. So what else is there possibly that you could be doing if you were not doing fantasy football?
Yeah, it's I guess there's like two answers to that. There could be one like, is there other stuff you would be interested in doing, like content around? I do think it would be, with Underdog this year, we did like the Underdog Cardio Club and stuff like that. I was mentioning the boxing. I think something maybe with kind of like fitness stuff would be fun. I've done intermittent fasting for a while. So some of those, I guess, kind of like, I guess you'd call them like life hacky, exercise, nutrition things. I could maybe see myself doing like some fun content around that. But if I wasn't in content creation at all on my own, I was always interested in copywriting as well. Like, I think it'd be fun to work at an ad agency and, come up with, ad copy for certain marketing campaigns. I think I have a good skill set with that as far as kind of like building narratives and stuff around, products and stuff like that. So I think that would probably be like the true answer. If I just, shelved this all today, I would probably try to go get a job at an ad agency.
Nice.
You mentioned that intermittent fasting. Is that the period of time between breakfast and brunch?
For me, it's the period of time between dinner and lunch, but I think you can basically make it whatever you want.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not going more than like 3 hours without food, because I don't know if I can handle that.
I think this can be a portion of your new, Matt Downward Dog yoga channel, is you talk about intermittent fasting for 2 hours between your breakfasts and then show people how to do a downward dog.
Is it intermittent if it's like only 3 hours? Like, that's more like what's the word?
Extra
for it? I don't even
minute.
know.
That's just called snacking.
It's going to take me 30 minutes to get into the downward dog pose. Let's be honest.
Maybe that will actually do good
at the
views.
same time.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of mention a few things. You mentioned ship chasing there. Splash Play comes to mind. The Randomizer Drafts, the Swole Cast. I mean, these are some podcasts that you've kind of done here in the last little while as well. And then I was going to ask you, what has fantasy football and this whole space taught you about yourself? We know there's the improv background and everything that comes with that, but doing all these shows, meeting all these people, what has fantasy football taught you about Peter Overzet?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question. It's a heavy question. It's making me, most of these questions you ask me, I got something right off the dome. This one's actually causing me to do some introspection. I think, it goes back to that idea too of, when I was doing in real life comedy and liking to get that feedback and make people laugh. And I think I have found that I do like being an entertainer. And one of the things with kind of like Discord and Twitter, but Discord more specifically of building out a community. And community is a word we joke around with NFTs so much because everyone's like, I'm in it for the community, not the price. But unironically, it's been just incredible to have these different kind of sub communities around the shows and content I do. And, whether that's ship chasing or randomizer, and to kind of be able to have those in a Discord and get to be able to, to really get to know people that are the fans of it and have them be a part of it. And, you know, when I do shows, like one of the reasons I love doing live streams is just having that chat component. Like it gives me energy. You know, I bounce ideas off of them. They steer me in different directions. And so I think I've discovered how much I like that, you know, interaction between the chat and the audience and myself. And, you know, I don't ever feel like I am just like creating something for them and then I'm like done with it. Like I feel like we're kind of creating it together, and, you know, stuff that plays well, oh, I file that away and want to do more of that, and vice versa. So I think, yeah, just learning how much I appreciate kind of doing this with other people, whether that's making content with my friends or kind of interacting with people and seeing what they like.
We talked about your journey and you making that transition into the industry full time. And we know that those transitions, you know, obviously relationships are super important with that. Who are some of the people, maybe one or two people that you have had a lot of respect for that have helped you along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many people I could name, just because every step of the way, I think because I was kind of approaching things early on from a unique angle that, you know, some people kind of noticed it and appreciated. I mean, just a few like off the top of my head would be, you know, Adam Levitan. He was the first one that was willing to come on and be a guest. He was Manz's first guest. And like, I had like sub 1,000 Twitter followers. I had like 14 YouTube subscribers, and he was willing to come on and joke around with the Manz. And he really supported me early on. I'm sure everyone here knows Scott Fish. Like no one needs to be told what a great guy Scott Fish is. But my very first podcast I did, it was actually with my improv buddies. And that's kind of when I made the transition. And we had a podcast called Fantasy Football Comedy Hour. And Scott Fish, again, reaches out to us. We're like 4 episodes deep and says, hey, you guys should have a website. And I was like, Scott, we just started this show. Like, I'm not paying to like have a website like made. Like we got to just make some episodes first. And he's like, no, he's like, I'll do it for you. I think what you guys are doing is really cool. So Scott Fish, just like out of the blue, makes us a website, like just really incredible stuff like that. And honestly, too many to name over the years, but those are 2 that just jump out to me from like early on. Were willing to, what I would call, take chances on us when I was unproven and had no reason, you know, to be getting any help from anybody.
Well, that's cool. So 2 pieces of advice. 1, give advice to those of us trying to make it in this fantasy football space. And then 2, give us your best parenting advice.
Parenting?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know
well, what's that?
Even if you're not
You know what?
parent, like you can still give advice.
Actually, I would take this
best.
one step further. Give us Pete Manzanelli's best parenting advice.
Oh, God. That could be dicey. That could be dicey. So on the fantasy advice thing, and I do feel I have, you know, strong thoughts on this. And one of the things that I think about a lot is, because I know people really want to make it. And a lot of times what happens, and I notice, is they say, what is someone else doing who's successful? I want to replicate that. I'll try to do that. Right. But that's really hard to do, because not only do you have to catch up to replicate what they're doing, but then you got to even be better than them at what they've been doing for a while. And so I do really feel strongly about, you know, finding a unique angle and making sure on top of that you're passionate about it and that it's fun for you. Like, I feel like if something feels like a grind to you, I'm just going to use an example. Say you're like writing a waiver column and you're really good at writing this waiver column, but it kind of feels like a grind, but you're like, you know what, if I can just write this waiver column full time, I'll be happy. Well, guess what? If you're really good at writing that waiver column, someone's going to want to pay you to write that waiver column. So if it feels like a grind for you now, it's going to continue to feel like a grind for you. And so that's why I think it's important. Make sure what you're doing is super interesting and fun and exciting to you, because then when someone comes along and it's like, I like what you're doing, they're going to want you to do that thing. And so I think I see a lot of people, you know, maybe trying to do stuff that doesn't actually interest them just because they think that's the clearest path to whatever, you know, success is. But it might take longer. I would say, I think my path to getting here has taken a long time. I started doing content in like 2016, and it wasn't until 5 years later. And I think I was just kind of patient and trusted, like, hey, I'm only going to continue doing stuff I really enjoy doing. And if it works out, it works out. But at least I know I'm not going to burn out on it.
And
give us that parenting advice.
The parenting advice, man. So yeah, all my parenting advice is just, you know, secondhand from watching other parents. You know, Pete Manzanelli would just tell you to get paid and get laid. I think he would also say to make sure that you're using protection so you don't have to deal with kids, I think would be Manz and Ellie's. But I really, just from a distance, I really respect the parents who I see that they are able to kind of fold like being a parent into their life, and not necessarily sacrifice, everything they're doing. And it seems like an almost impossible thing to do with how hard it is to take care of kids. And who knows if I'm speaking to the choir here, but I'm always impressed with parents who are able to kind of juggle that dynamic where they still get to, keep the things that are important to them, whether it's hobbies or certain things, while still being a good parent. That's always an impressive feat to me.
Well, AP, we really appreciate you coming on the show here today, talking about everything. Just want to kind of give a little shout out to what you're working on currently right now, whether that's that ship chasing, the randomizers, the Matthew Berry newsletter that we talked about there at Fantasy Life. What else you got going on?
Yeah, those are the big ones right now. We're just in full best ball mode. So I do drafts every Monday morning on my channel. I do the randomizer, like you mentioned, on Thursday, ship chasing Wednesday nights. We're drafting teams on both Underdog and FFPC. And then, the Fantasy Life newsletter, we've really ramped it up here in these past couple months. For a couple years, I was just kind of writing it on my own, just keeping it afloat. And this year we really beefed it up. We got a CEO, Elliot Christ, a director of content, Jordan. And I'm really impressed with what our contributors are doing. And it's a really beefed up, meaty newsletter that I'm really proud of. And that's, completely free. You can get that in your inbox every morning. And I highly recommend it.
If you are one of two people, mom and dad, who watch this show but don't know what the Fantasy Life newsletter is, I mean, you've got all kinds of creative people over there at Fantasy Life. Cooter Doodle comes to mind, Jake Trowbridge, he comes to mind, yourself. I mean, these are definitely people that can do special things in this space, especially when it comes to comedy and kind of making people laugh. I kind of pull out of this whole thing here what my dad used to say: you don't get an argument with an idiot because they'll bring you down to their level and beat you with experience. And that kind of goes to what you were saying there a little bit about, don't go off and try and do what someone else is doing because they've already been doing it for a while. They're going to beat you with that experience. Go out, find that own path of yours, and do that better than anyone else can possibly do it. And I think that's kind of that advice kind of pulling what it kind of hits home to me more than anything here. So, Peter, I really appreciate you coming on the show here. For Major, for Tara, I'm Matt Donnelly. This has been the Behind the Grind with Pete Overzet, and we will be back next time with a brand new episode. So we'll stay tuned. See you then, and make sure to head over to fantasypoints.com. Enter that promo code Vipers22 and get 10% off that subscription today. See you later.